this next discussion, please welcome the VP of Homes and Villas at Marriott International, Jennifer Hsieh, and the CEO of Southern Vacation Rentals, Scott Seay, and the CEO of Key Data, Jason Sprenkle, in conversation with the founder and editor-in-chief of VRM Intel, Amy Hinote.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for some of us. How are you doing? Thank you for being here. And Brian, thank you for having us. I want to introduce this panel super quickly so we can jump in. We've got Jason Sprenkle, who actually used to be on the property management side with 360 Blue, recently sold that company to Natural Retreats in the middle of a pandemic and put all that money and time into Key Data. We also have Jennifer Hsieh. She's with Homes and Villas, and congratulations on 2 years with Homes and Villas. That's quite an anniversary achievement, especially in this sector. And then we've got Scott from Southern Vacations, who operates along the Panhandle markets, multiple markets from pretty much Apalachicola all the way through Alabama. So you guys, thank you for being here. We want to talk about the ground game a little bit. Jason, I want to jump in and let you cover some high-level data points, some broad like pacing data, and some trends that we're seeing in the vacation rental industry, and then we'll discuss that.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Good to be with you guys today. So this data comes from 2,300 property managers that we collect the data from directly on a daily basis, just to give you a sense worldwide. And I'll jump right into it here. We're looking at pacing. And really the story here is this is RevPAR, the US, Europe, and the Southeast. And the color scheme throughout the next few slides are the same. We're looking at 2019, 2020, and 2021. Obviously, the story in 2021 showing RevPAR way above. But let's jump into the details here. This is year-over-year occupancy. We're looking from April of 20 through August of 2021, the green line being today. So looking forward-looking data on the right. And with occupancy here, really as soon as the market started to open back up, our property managers on the ground in the US started to year all the way back to the beginning of summer of last year. Had what might surprise some people in the travel space, but had a great fall. Almost touched the same line there in December, but the story is all about what's happening this year. An extraordinary spring break just to the left of the dash line, and an extraordinary summer shaping up. You're looking at ADR here, not quite as explosive as occupancy, but really still way up across the board, 15+% in spring break and over 10% across the board for the entire US forward looking for summer. Next slide here shows us the equation there that results, which is the RevPAR. And you see from the time we opened up in May, a great year all the way through. And the point to be made here is this isn't just reflective of how we did versus 2020. 2019 would come right between those lines if you look at spring break and summer. And so 2021 really shaping up to be an extraordinary year in the vacation rental space across the board, whether you're comparing it to 2020 or a normal year like 2021. A few other points here. Booking window, a lot of questions about it. Still a little bit shorter heading into summer there. You see it's still holding back a little bit from what we saw in 2020, but pretty similar to 2019. And so across the board, we're thinking of booking window as essentially having returned to normal here. Not different than what you would see in a normal year like 2019. Next slide looks at length of stay. A lot of people assuming that lengths of stay are still much longer. You see there in 2020, we had a little bit longer length of stays as people were coming out of the city to spend time in some of these leisure markets. But really a shorter length of stay, if anything, almost back to normal as well. We're not seeing a longer length of stay like a lot of people are assuming. And few more slides here on some specific markets. This is occupancy for spring break, and all you've got to do is look across the board at 2021. The short answer is it's way up across really every region in the United States. Next slide coming up is summer. Again, looking at this is now forward-looking occupancy as of May 10th, importantly. And so you see 15, 20, 30% up across the board. We're looking at every region in the United States, and there's not a single one that's not up almost double digits, certainly in the high teens. And so we are busy on the ground is the short answer there. This is forward-looking ADR. Again, you've got New England there that's slightly behind, but still above 2019. The rest of the markets up is the short answer. When you put those two together, you really are looking at just what only can be described as what feels like on the ground, the busiest spring break, busiest summer for vacation rentals that I've ever experienced in 20 years, and certainly since we started tracking the data. Next slide. All right, here, where are the bookings coming from? We're looking at all of these professional bookings that we record and which OTA channels are winning versus direct bookings there in the middle. And the short answer is Airbnb is gaining a little bit of ground for our professional managers, and direct bookings on their website are losing a little ground and losing it consistently for the last 3 years. Vrbo essentially even there, 22, 22, and 23%. So the real story here is Airbnb gaining a little bit against direct bookings. Next slide, and that was US. And then the last slide, the qualifier here on the last slide, which is if you compare the money versus the number of guests. What you see here for direct is that the money or the revenue in orange is a little bit heavier than the number of the guests in green. The reverse is true for Airbnb, which is reflective of the fact that the bookings that are coming in for Airbnb for our professional managers tend to be the lower cost bookings versus the direct channel, which sees some of the higher value bookings. And that's it. That's a snapshot of what's going on. A busy, busy year headed our way.
I really appreciate that, Jason. It's a really interesting look, especially as we compare it to other sectors of travel. Jennifer, you have a lot of visibility of that at Marriott. So can you tell us what you're seeing from the consumer level about what is causing this trend, and is it sustainable?
Sure. I mean, what Jason just walked through is a really good quantification of the behaviors we're seeing. We have seen revenge travel begin starting in March of this year. As consumers began to get confident with the vaccine rollouts, we saw bookings begin to take off for summer vacations. And so we were seeing like the stays be fairly tight in 2020, given the uncertainty of the environment, into lengthening to 150 plus days. And so generally what we're seeing is consumers are going bigger. Over 60% of the bookings that we have are on 3+ bedroom destinations. And so this is a desire to get back together with family and friends and travel. We're seeing the days spent away get longer. And so well and deep into the 5+, 6+ days. And we're seeing very summer-oriented destinations. Consumers have been dreaming about getting away. And so we are seeing them book at the beaches, the lakes, the natural parks. And over 90% of the bookings that we get are from our Bonvoy members. So we see continued desire from this really strong base of travelers to quickly get out and enjoy time together again with family and friends.
Scott, so this has been like, no one expected this. I mean, we certainly hope to have a good year, but nothing like what we're seeing. When things rebounded in our industry, especially in your market, in your markets, they rebounded really quickly. How did that affect you in staffing? Like, had you furloughed and had to bring people back? And like, in terms of call center and your operations, what has this whiplash meant for you?
Well, I think early on, like everyone else, nobody knew what was going to happen. So certainly some furloughs and things happen where you try to get your business back in order. I mean, we're a business, so you have to watch the bottom line. At the same time, you didn't want to lose strong staff because eventually it would come back. And it came back, obviously, very ferociously. So I think at the beginning, we didn't do so well handling it. We had to get our people back in, retrain, make sure we're staying on top of it. I'd say after the first few weeks, though, we got pretty much back into our rhythm. And that followed through for most of 2020. And it really blew up again at the beginning of 2021, and we've seen that continue through this period in time. I think there's lots of factors as to why people are struggling right now to find help, and we're certainly in that same cart with everyone else. But I think we're starting to see that maybe start to pick up again as summer comes through, and some of the schools are out, and we'll see that pick up some. But it's been a tumultuous year for sure. There's been lots of ups and downs, so I think we're weathering that storm pretty well, though.
So I want to talk to you about that staffing challenge while we're on that subject of your challenges. It's something that I hear all the time. In fact, I almost had someone cry yesterday about it. I know everyone's super tired right now. It's all hands on deck. It's been incredibly difficult in our industry for staffing. But I was wondering, we've been hearing from some of these multi-destination players, and you've got a couple of those in your market. When you're looking to find new employees, do you think the local companies have an advantage or a disadvantage over the multi-destination companies like a Vacasa or like I guess they're rolling them up, or a V-Trips or something like that?
I certainly think there's a huge advantage to being local. We know a lot of people. Our families are involved in a lot of the other businesses here. We talk a lot with each other. I mean, we meet, all the CEOs and business owners in this area. We get together quite often. We see each other at softball games and different venues throughout the area. So we make contact, and I think that gives us an edge as well. Plus, a lot of the people coming back from college right now that live in this market. We know their parents, we know them. It gives us an opportunity to be able to hire them back into the roles that we need. And so I think that's definitely an advantage for us.
I wanted to talk too about this idea of scale. Jason, you just sold your company, but right before you sold, but I don't know how long, maybe a year or two, you actually grew to Breckenridge, got into a new market. What are the challenges with scale, and what efficiencies do you see? And I think another question I have is at the follow-up is are there efficiencies about time or profitability? When you're trying to scale, are you looking to save time, or are you looking to increase your profits?
We were looking to decrease our risk, I think, is the most honest answer. I think, we were in a single location geographically. We had built a nice business over 14 years, and we knew we were susceptible to things like hurricanes, right? Everybody's got their own risk out there. And so for us, it was a little bit of diversification just in terms of, revenue, but really it was a risk diversification for us. And the lesson for us was we went a little small. We bought a small company, 25 units. I think looking back, you've got to have a little bit larger footprint. I don't know, Amy, though, to your point about whether or not you get significant advantages from the brand across multiple destinations. I think what you get is some efficiencies kind of from a hub and spoke model where you can consolidate accounting and finance, et cetera.
Scott, talking about that profitability side, as far as the local management companies right now, the companies, and I hate to say that local makes them sound small, but some of these are large companies like yours that manage hundreds and thousands of vacation rentals in regions. With this growth that we're seeing, are we also seeing that same growth in profitability?
Definitely. I mean, Jason alluded to it. It's about trying to find those leverage points. And certainly from a G&A perspective, we can leverage that over, as many properties as we can. I think where you start to lose some of that is when you're field-based. So you have to have the people, property managers, maintenance, housekeepers. Those are things you got to continue to grow linearly. But for the most part, yeah, a lot of that does reach to the bottom line. If you've set yourself up properly, the hub and spoke that Jason talked about is kind of our model as well. We have several small warehouses out there, but everything that needs to be handled from a corporate level is handled here centrally.
So when you've had the experience, you both had the experience of growing and then kind of coming back and thinking about it again, and then kind of growing again. What, Scott, when you guys grew adjacently the first time, you pulled back and then went back out, what did you learn from that?
Well, just like Jason said, we didn't want to be everything in one market here. One hurricane kind of will hurt you. That's not hurricanes only. It's, we had an oil spill here. You have the pandemic where some states shut down and some didn't. So we're both in Alabama and Florida. So we go from, coastal Alabama all the way to the Forgotten Coast. So that kind of gives us a broad spectrum of almost 200 miles of beaches. So we have an opportunity. When the Hurricane Michael was in Panama City Beach, we had everything, west of there open. When it was Sally in Alabama and the far reaches of Florida there, we had everything to the east still open up. So we could make adjustments for different people in that market. So we grew first through acquisition, and I think that's great. You need good people when you do that, and that's really what you're acquiring. I think the most when you buy another company is hopefully they have great people along with some properties. But then you also learn that those property mixes, there might be a reason they were selling. So I also, salute to those that can go out there and do it more organically, which is kind of what we went back to a little bit. And I think there's some opportunity to do that. But we when you want to get in these areas and start a new market, you have to go in there and look for an acquisition, I think. And then you look organically after that point.
One thing I have noticed, I've stayed in a few vacation rentals since the pandemic, and it has definitely escalated in quality. We're seeing the hospitality bedding, the linens, the kitchen, standardized kitchen packages. It's really starting to change there in terms of the quality of the vacation rental, going from, someone's living room, someone's home, to actually looking a lot more like a hotel. Scott, have you guys made any changes, in terms of standardization to adapt to a new environment?
I think a couple of things drive that. First of all, technology, the thing, Jason's doing now has allowed us to have that information at our fingertips and make different decisions. One of the things we did right after the pandemic, it wasn't just about cleaning, but if you think about a lot of places you visit today, the comforter, gets thrown in the closet or off to the corner. We made a decision to purchase these coverlets in every single one of our markets. So, 5,500 beds, we now supply coverlets that get washed every single time. And so you try to find those things you think will make the connection for people to feel safe. At the same time, that's where you get professionally managed as well. We understand how to do that. We have all the internal functions to be able to do that. We have delivery systems and laundries and all the things it takes to be able to do that from a distribution standpoint. So I think we've learned from that, and those are things that probably won't change. I don't see those changing.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to see. One of the things that Jason, your slide about, actually, I'm going to ask Jennifer about this, the slide about Airbnb. They have a lot of individual properties. They have focused on the individual host. They've said over and over that they're going to continue to focus on the individual host. But Scott's point about being professionally managed has some merit too. Jennifer, you guys opted to only work with professional managers. Is that correct?
That is exactly right. We have a different business model, and that is because we've really recognized that there are some really amazing property managers out there who not only understand how to deliver hospitality to our guests, but also understand the locale. And when we entered the space 2 years ago, we were really pleasantly surprised because the partners that we would identify as property managers wanted to learn from the Marriott experience in hospitality, 90 plus years of hospitality experience with deep understanding of processes and systems and standards and what guests expect. And so we've been excited to come into the market to help continue to educate and professionalize with a strong perspective on what we think creates a solid customer experience that guests can go in and say, this place feels clean. I feel like I'm supported with service throughout. So we've been delighted with that. And we've continued to grow our base of property management companies.
I've definitely seen, this escalation or the acceleration of standards being adopted in our industry is clear. Do you think Marriott's had a lot to do with that? I actually kind of do. I think a lot of people wanted to be on your program and you required them to do a whole lot of new stuff to be on it.
That's right. I hope so. I think we had two sets of requirements. One set, I think, is around what the customer sees, right? And so that really was, what type of service recovery do you have? What does the environment look like? What are the sheets that you deliver? And largely, those have been fairly stable. We've flexed as we've learned in the industry and made some adjustments to give our partners a little bit more liberty. But for the most part, we think a clean bed, a clean home, a responsive set of service standards helps immensely. And we actually see our current partners improve as we work with them. So with a partner that we may come on and initially have 2/3 of their portfolio, over the course of the coming 6 to 12 months, we up that percentage because more and more of their homes begin to qualify to our standards. And so not only do we see that growth with each of our partners, we see it collectively. So I think there's a lot of good momentum there. And we also have standards that we do in terms of how we select which property management companies we work with. And so making sure that we're working with great operators who understand how to treat our guests has been really a priority for us.
Jennifer, we did read, I think in Skift actually, that you guys had a little pushback on some contracts. I heard some of this from a couple of property managers said this too, about non-compete agreement, saying that they can't work with other hotels like Hyatt, Hilton, Accor, and then we had the rate parity agreement. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about both of those clauses and where you guys are on those?
So I think one of the things that's important for us is we build partnerships with our property management companies, and our goal is to identify the property management companies that we think are the best in their area, and we grow with them. And what I can say is we haven't had a property management company who's worked with us walk away. So once they join and become part of the Marriott family, they stay with us. And so that I think speaks loudly to the fact that we partner deeply with folks. We evolve our business as we go. We listen to their needs. So an example was one of the biggest things that property managers said to us is we want more choice in how we connect to you. And so we launched this channel connectivity program. And so I feel very confident in the partnership that we create with our partners.
Yeah, Jason can give you some more stories on API connections, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, commiserate on that one.
Nothing's like that. That's fun. Scott, Jason, Jason, I'm asking about 360 Blue more than anything. Were you listing with Homes and Villas?
I was not yet. No, we had not yet. But
Scott, are you listing with them?
We had started with them just prior to the pandemic, and so everything kind of went sideways a little bit. Now we're in the process. They're actually integrating with our PM track. Once that part gets done, then we'll look at doing that as well.
And
Jen,
now
do you
we
think
have
there's
access.
PMS? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say now we have access to 360 Blue with our natural retreats relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
So do you think those integrations with the property management systems are going to make a huge difference for you?
It's going to be incredible for two reasons. One is we're doing this because our property management partners are telling us we want more direct paths to you. So Scott's a perfect example, which is we want to be on Homes and Villas. We think they've got great inventory, but they wanted a direct connection. So we know that it's an easier and much more reliable approach. And it actually allows us to scale much faster. And the second reason is for our guests. We wanted to give them the best information, the most accurate information, the most real-time information. And by creating these new direct connections through new property management systems and channel managers, we're going to enable that.
I have a follow-up for you later. I'm going to, because I know I'm out of time, but I'll put it on the website. One thing, the slides are actually on vrmnl.com/Skift slides. You can find them there if you want to zero in on that information. Brian, do I have time for one more with Jennifer or no? Yes. Okay. So going back to that rate parity thing, I do have this question about rate parity in our industry. Like, are you really looking for that, or is that something that is just more of a standard, contract language?
One of the things that we do is we want a couple things. The hotel industry, we are very clear with a lot of our partners that you can always find the best rate on Marriott.com for our hotel products. And certainly there are learnings that I think cross over from the hotel industry to the home rental industry. I think second, we're always advocating for the best for our Marriott Bonvoy members. And so as we think about evolving and building the business, we'll always continue to not only advocate for our members, but also do that in partnership with our property managers.
I think one of those things that, Jennifer, they don't, with the guest fees, with the dynamic guest fee on Airbnb and Vrbo, the property manager doesn't know what the guest is actually paying. So they don't really have the ability to give you that rate parity assurance.
Yeah, and I think that there's lots of nuance there. And I think what we often look for is when we work with property managers, we always look for them to be fair about how they distribute their fees and their rates. And so as long as they're being equitable around that, and we're advocating for our customers collectively, I think we're in a good place.
That makes sense. I appreciate the extra time, Brian. You guys, Scott, Jennifer, Jason, thank you so much. And I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.